Today, Veronica De La Rosa said this.
Today marks an inflection point when our duty of care to our children as a society finally supersedes the bottom line of an industry that made such an atrocity as Sandy Hook possible to begin with. Today is a day of accountability for an industry that has thus far enjoyed operating with immunity and impunity. And for this, I am grateful.
Veronica De La Rosa lost her 6-year-old son to the mass murderer who used a Remington AR-15 rifle to fire 154 bullets in less than 5 minutes, killing 20 first graders and kindergarten students and 6 adults at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut in 2012. Today, the families of 9 of the victims of that mass murder reached a settlement with the manufacturer of the Remington AR-15, a settlement for $73 million. It is the first time a gun manufacturer has faced liability for a mass shooting. Today, President Biden called it a historic settlement and said, while this settlement does not erase the pain of that tragic day, it does begin the necessary work of holding gun manufacturers accountable for manufacturing weapons of war and irresponsibly marketing these firearms. This is how Remington marketed the weapon to both responsible gun owners and mass murderers who have made the AR-15 their favorite mass murder weapon. President Biden said, we can deliver a clear message to gun manufacturers and dealers. They must either change their business models to be part of the solution for the gun violence epidemic, or they will bear the financial cost of their complicity. Joining our discussion now is Shannon Watts. She is the founder of Moms Demand Action, a group she began after the Sandy Hook shooting to advocate for gun safety measures. And back with us is former Senator Claire McCaskill. And Shannon Watts, let me begin with you. You've been tracking this daily as this case has moved along. What is the importance of this settlement today?
Well, you know, I'm not a survivor of gun violence or the Sandy Hook community, but I cannot even imagine or speak to what this means to them. But it is really has been their tenacity that this major movement, right, that a gun manufacturer is finally being held accountable. It is such an important moment. And really, this settlement should strike fear into the hearts of the gun industry, and particularly their CEOs. They have gotten away with utterly disregarding public safety, and they should be held accountable, manufacturers and sellers, for their reckless business practices. They have had almost complete legal immunity due to Congress providing them that protection back in 2005. And this really is sort of a chink in the armor. And it's our job now to continue chipping away at those weak spots until there is real accountability among gun manufacturers.
Let's listen to what attorney Josh Koskoff said today. He represents the families.
This case was never about damages in the sense of compensation. It was about damages in the sense of forcing change. These families, they would pay everything. They'd give it all back just for 1 minute. That would be true justice. And the linchpin of this settlement is that it allows these families the rights to share the information as to what they learned with the public.
Claire McCaskill, that point he made about what the lawyers and the families have discovered through the discovery process in this lawsuit will be made public. That can be extremely damaging to Remington as well as the industry.
Yeah, they fought for that. That was a key piece of this settlement. Maybe more important to the families than the amount of money that they would receive was they could lay bare the marketing plan of this company and in trying to push these weapons of war on the American public. But let me just say, Congress failed after Sandy Hook. And while today is really important and we're all so glad that there's finally been some sense of justice over Sandy Hook, Congress failed. There is federal immunity from these lawsuits. This lawsuit actually succeeded because there was a state statute having to do with consumer protection. It was the marketing of this gun that allowed the legal basis for this settlement. And there are other states that have similar laws, but there's a whole lot of states, Lawrence, that don't. In fact, there was just a case in Nevada where the court there said no to a lawsuit by one of the many victims of the bump stock shooting in Las Vegas because Nevada has a law that protects the gun manufacturers, gives them immunity. So I want us to celebrate this sense of justice today, particularly for those families and their incredible loss. But we got to double our efforts because most Americans want there to be more gun safety laws in place. We are the world's leader of massacre of our own citizens by weapons of war.
Shannon Watts, many of us have thought that product liability litigation is an obvious route to getting some control over this, but there is an exemption in product liability law that's saying that no, you cannot sue people for the inherent manufacturers for the inherent danger of this device that they make, guns. Whereas you could do it if you found a danger in the manufacturing of any other good. You could sue under product liability law, saying that that object is defective and dangerous in its very design. It is, but the one thing that you can't do that with is the product that is designed to kill people.
Yeah, I mean, if you look across all industries, right, from automobiles to tobacco to most consumer products, even opioid manufacturers, legal accountability has driven innovation. And it includes new safety features and responsible sales and marketing practice, all things that are designed to save lives. And because Congress gave the gun manufacturers and dealers this immunity, they've really been shielded against efforts to hold reckless actors accountable. What is so heartening is that this settlement shows that shield is not impenetrable. And we are making real progress in state houses and in courthouses all across the country. For example, last year, New York really put up a new law that will allow gun manufacturers there to be sued, that goes up against FLACA. The governor of New Jersey is talking about doing something similar. So this should serve as a wake-up call for the gun industry. You know, if you act recklessly and illegally, you will be held accountable.
Senator Caskell, I want to consider what it took for members of these families to do this. Entering this kind of litigation meant that, to some degree, what happened to their children, what happened in Sandy Hook that day, was going to be with them every day in a fairly vivid way, every day of this litigation, which has gone on for years and years now. And the strength that it took for them as plaintiffs just to engage in this case.
Yeah, and this case has had a torturous path. You can imagine, I mean, it went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court declined to rule on behalf of the gun manufacturers in this case. And so this has really been a long haul. Keep in mind, it's been almost 10 years since this tragedy occurred. So, of course, these families had to live with this. And I thought it was telling how emotional the lawyer got today. You know, I think sometimes people forget that there are lawyers that really feel their cases emotionally. And clearly, that lawyer who has lived with those families, held their hand, told them not to give up, said, we will keep fighting. He today also had an incredible amount of emotion about what they have done and what they're now going to be able to do. And he can now share this with other lawyers in other states that have similar statutes, which will give them an opening, as Shannon said, that maybe we can begin to pierce this immunity with marketing tactics that the gun manufacturers have used, especially in states that are less friendly to weapons of war flooding the streets.
Claire McCaskill and Shannon Watts, thank you both very much for joining us tonight.
You bet.
And up next, we continue our series on the supremely qualified women